Catherine Stock telling me that it was really slow to get in. So, but Linda, you're with us. We're still waiting for Jerry.
I am.
You're there. We're still looking for Jerry. He's always on time. He's always early. Should I send him a text or? Let's see here. As soon as I do this, he'll show up. Well, I sent him a text.
While we're waiting, I'm trying to make sure I can get Kendra Hall on here, but the way it's listed. So I'm going to allow Galaxy 51 to talk. Kendra, if you're there, can you say hello to me in just a moment? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Okay. Hi, Kendra. Okay. You're here now. So go ahead and mute, and then you can pipe up when the agenda item's up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome.
No sign of Jerry yet?
He's here.
Oh, he is. Okay.
We've been having internet trouble, it seems like, downtown today.
There he is. Okay. Well, it's 4 minutes after 6. I'm going to call the regular Manzanita City Council meeting for March to order. And before we get started, I want to respond to a couple of quick emails I got this afternoon. Dan Weitzel sent me an email to remember to refer folks to the city broadcast page on the city's website if you want to follow the meeting on live streaming. Then I also got an email from Dave Dillon that he said I kind of was confusing on the 70-30 split thing this afternoon. So I'm going to take a real quick run at that again. The 70-30 split came into effect, and sales tax collected on short-term rentals has to be split 70% towards tourist promotion or tourist facilities, and 30% can be used in the general fund. Here in Manzanita, we were grandfathered on the first 7% of our tax because we've had it in place since the 1990s. At the time this 70-30 split became law, when Gary Bullard was mayor, we added an additional 2% to the city tax for short-term rentals, and that 2% is which the city has to split 70-30. So I hope that clarifies everything. I guess I was a little sleepy this afternoon. I don't know. Okay, so here we go. First item, as always, is audience participation. This is a chance for public comment. It's not a time for debate, nor is it a time for members of the public to ask questions or receive answers from the council. And each person has up to 3 minutes to speak. So do we have any public comment this evening?
I do. I have Karen Small.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Karen Small. I'm a mother and a grandmother and a full-time resident of Manzanita. I'm embarking on a new adventure, a new passion of mine to study water, both globally and locally. And so a couple of the big picture things that I found out is that 71% of the Earth's surface is water. 96.5% is salt water. 3.5% is freshwater. Of that freshwater, 68% is trapped in ice, 33% in the ground, and 2% in streams and rivers. Freshwater is precious, isn't it? So I'm curious about water for Manzanita, and I don't know much yet. So here are the questions that I've come up with so far that I'm going to be pursuing, and I'm sure I'll have more questions. 1, what is the source of our water? Where is it located? How secure is the source? How is water quality measured? What is the system of distribution? How will water be distributed to new developments? And is there enough water for now and the future? What is the projection of water availability considering climate change? So that's it. Thank you for your time.
You know, I think for those kind of answers, Karen, I would direct you to our Public Works Director, Dan Weitzel, and I'm sure he can give you answer all those questions you have pretty readily. So you might want to drop him an email.
And I think you'll be pleased with the answers.
Yeah. Do you have anybody
Mayor,
else?
Mayor, it might be helpful for Karen as well that Dan is posting, if he hasn't already, the new water master plan study, which
Just came out.
within the plan describes a lot of the answers that Karen was asking. So I don't know whether Dan has or has not, but he was, as late as today, was planning on it.
He's on the agenda later tonight too, so.
Oh, there you
Good
go.
timing.
Yeah. Do we have anybody else who wants to make a public comment tonight?
Yeah, next we have Gerald Weiniger.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Gerald.
All right. I just would appreciate if tonight we choose wisely on the STR committee, and please choose members who have no suggestion at a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody else?
We do one more, CC Kennedy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Carol, and I would like to thank you all for listening to the concerns that have been expressed by people of the community, and I want to thank the people that have been involved in the short-term rental community or the commission that Steve Nuttall referred to. But I am concerned that if a new committee is formed to review the short-term rental situation, what will be done to assure a broad representation of concerned people that are directly affected by the short-term rentals in the area? And I know you're all concerned about this and you're going to want to include people. So I'm just wanting to make sure that there's a broad representation of residents, homeowners, second homeowners, the people that are trying to manage some of these problems, and of course Steve Nuttall that was so involved in the other committee. But I hope that you will consider new people and bring in a broad diversification of citizens to try to problem solve this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If we have no other public comment, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which tonight we have the approval of the minutes and workshop from February 9th and approval of bills for payment. Anybody have a question on the consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve it.
Just a quick question. I know Nina was going to get back to us on the allocation of that visa payment, the large visa payment that ended up all on the water tab.
Yes, yeah. Do you want to address that, Nina? I think you hadn't got on yet. She talked about that a minute ago, but
Yes,
so-
yeah,
okay.
I redistributed that and sent it in a detail report. So I don't know if you've got that yet, but I could send that out to you.
I
tomorrow.
haven't seen an updated one.
It's not on the bills for payment report. It's
Oh,
the
okay.
detailed one, yeah. So it was just removed from that account and then distributed to what it actually should have been.
And it's
Um,
probably good to clarify too, Dina, that that purchase was for the water department. It just needed to be allocated to the appropriate accounts within that department.
I move to accept the consent agenda with the, with that updated allocation.
Second,
been moved and seconded. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. And thank you. Okay, our first item of new business tonight is the event permit for the 2022 summer season for the Manzanita Farmers Market. I'll turn that over to you, Layla.
Thank you. Well, for me, this is so exciting because this is the beginning of spring and summer. So I just I'll just start quickly and then I'm going to hand it over to Kendra Hall, who is the new market manager. And Kendra and I and Dan have all met on site, and we're working really closely with her to sort of finalize the layout. She's going to be making some changes to that layout that we all agree is probably beneficial and more efficient. So we'll be finalizing those details with her. But a couple of good highlights, I think, is that they're hoping to start earlier and extend the market a little longer. So with that, Kendra, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself and talk to us about this market season.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name's Kendra Hall. I've lived in Tillamook County for 22 years, and I'm super excited to be the new market manager for Manzanita. I'm looking forward to moving the market past the COVID situations that we've been through for the last couple of years, and appreciate how everybody in the past has worked with us. We are going to be adding 5 more weekends this year. We would like to start May 27th, which is Memorial Day weekend, and take it on through to October 7th. This year, with the added dates, our projected expected cash flow through the market looks to be about $500,000. So this is really exciting to hear that we are able to bring that and spread that into our local producers and market vendors. And I'm excited to be here to have everyone join us this next season. If you've got any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Everybody has seen the event permit in the packet. Does anybody have any questions about the farmer's market this year? Well, I think the Underhill Plaza last year worked out swimmingly as a location because we get a lot of people at the farmer's market, and there's plenty of places to park up there. I think it worked pretty splendidly, and I'm sure it will again this year.
Definitely excited to bring everybody back to the Underhill Plaza.
Good. So nobody has any questions? Somebody want to make a motion to accept the permit?
Mayor, I would have one quick question for Kendra, and that is whether you have published or created a overall plan. I don't think we got it in our packet, but the city may have received one. We haven't received one. Okay. So Kendra, have you folks done as you have in the past where you've created a overall plan that talks about safety and crowds and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, we are working on that so that I will be able to submit that to you by the 1st of May. Risk management is in my history. So being with that brought to my attention, and as a market attender last year, saw a few things that made me a little nervous, and I plan on correcting those. And I'm hoping that you will be happy with what I have figured out how to make this all work very splendidly for everyone safely.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, why doesn't somebody make a motion then, and we'll get this thing going.
I'll move that we approve the permit request for Manzanita Farmers Market 2022.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the farmer's market event permit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you very much. That was
Thank
easy.
you very
Kendra.
much. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, next item on the agenda is a budget committee appointment, and we did things a little different this year on this appointment. I asked Councilman Steve Nuttall and Budget Committee Chairman Dave Dillon to interview the candidates for us, and we had 4 candidates, and their recommendation to me, which I agree with, is a reappointment of Jim Dopp, who has recent Manzanita Budget Committee experience, and we'd like to reappoint him for another 3-year term. Anybody have any questions on that?
I was just curious to get Steve's reflection on the process, how it worked, and if it makes sense to use a similar process moving forward.
Thanks, Jerry. And Mayor and I have had discussions about this as well as Dave. I don't know if Dave's on the meeting today or not.
Yes,
Yeah, I
he's
guess he
here.
is. I see him there, so he may want to have comment as well. I thought it went really pretty well. And in the letter that Dave and I sent to the mayor, we expressed not only our appreciation for the people that applied, but marvel, I guess, at the qualities and experiences of those people that are willing to step up and assist the city in a committee like this. We are really blessed to have these folks. It was, it's hard because you've got 4 really qualified folks. And Jim got our nod based upon the fact that he closed out the term of another person who resigned from the budget committee. So this is going to be his first real term, but he had, I think, 2 years of experience with the budget committee. So we thought it was appropriate to extend that for him so that he can serve a full term. But otherwise, I thought the process was good. And if it were me, I would encourage us to follow a similar process into the future for any committee assignments, actually.
Well, we're gonna be appointing people after tonight to the short-term rental committee, and there's a lot of openings there. It's going to be quite a process we're going to have to come up with to review all those applicants, come up with the right mix to make that work. So we're gonna, this was one individual, so that next one's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, I think. Anyway, any other questions on this? Okay, Layla's got this set up as a resolution 2203 to reappoint Jim Dopp to a 3-year term on the budget committee. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving resolution 2203 for the reappointment of
Aye.
Jim Dopp to the budget committee, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. All right, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda, I guess this is yours, Jerry, about a local voters pamphlet. So I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. So I was contacted by Beverly Stein. A lot of you probably know her as a former Multnomah County chairwoman a few years back. She is now a resident of South County, Tillamook County, and works with the Democracy Project here in Tillamook County. And they are promoting the publication by local communities of voter pamphlets because Tillamook County does not, in its voter pamphlet, address local races for mayor or city council. Clatsop County actually does, and I don't know how common it is around the state for counties to do that, but Tillamook is clearly not doing it and has indicated to the Democracy Project that they don't intend to do it. So those folks have been pressing the case with other communities. I think Wheeler has already adopted it. Rockaway, Garibaldi, and Bay City are either already adopting or in process. It's a pretty straightforward request. When I heard about it from Beverly, I talked to Layla, and we just sort of went back and forth on sort of the logistics of it. I don't think it would be a very costly item. There may be ways to do it more cheaply. For example, it could be an inclusion in the quarterly water bill that goes out in September or October. Voter pamphlets in Oregon generally go out about 3 weeks before Election Day, but there's no reason why we couldn't put ours out earlier if it was ready. The idea, as it is at the county level or the state level, is that the candidates provide the content, and it's just within the parameters that are set by the local election official. In this case, would be Layla. So it would be kind of a low labor investment on our part. There would be some work involved on Layla's part, perhaps Josh's part, to pull the thing together, but they wouldn't be creating content. The cost really depends on mostly on postage, so it depends on how we put it out, who we put it out to, and whether or not we get a bulk rate or we use the water bill to get it out, since we're paying for that anyway. But anyway, in the packet tonight, you have an actual local voter pamphlet from the city of Roseburg for, I guess, their last general election. And you have a mock-up of what the Democracy Project made up for Bay City's proposed pamphlet. So you just get an idea that what it really is just one more vehicle to help people understand the issues and the candidates at the local level. Since we live in a bit of a media desert, anything we can do, I think, as we tend to do, or we try to do, I should say, at all of these meetings, we try to provide information and a level of awareness to citizens about what choices they have, not candidate choices, but choices in terms of policy and issues, and have an understanding of what we're all about. This is just an extension of that. And so what I've talked to Layla about is, unless there's opposition at the council level to us going forward, I was going to ask if Layla would bring us back sort of a proposal of sorts as to how we would proceed with this, give us a sense of how much it would cost. If it's prohibitive, then perhaps we don't do it. If it's something we can easily do and accommodate without much labor on our end, I think it's kind of a non-controversial, good government kind of idea, I think. And so I hope we can do it.
Any comments from anybody on this?
I'd be interested in seeing what Layla can put together. I guess maybe my only thought, using that keyword controversial, is whether or not there are going to be expenses involved in evaluating content for legality. I have a feeling there's a fair amount of analysis of the state voters pamphlet that goes through as to the veracity and type of arguments that are made within the voters pamphlet. So I would be curious to learn if anybody can say anything they want, and if the city is clear of any liability if that happens, or if we need to actually start analyzing content. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I agree that that's a worthy concern. But the good news is, of course, in Oregon, where voter pamphlets have been part of the culture for so long, I think it's probably well established, what the ground rules are. And I know that the Democracy Project itself is trying to get the various local city managers to network among themselves and figure out some of these sort of housekeeping issues. But I recall that with the county pamphlet, for the candidates that they do report on, they basically ask you to provide certain basic information about education, occupation, prior government experience, et cetera. But then you're right, you get to sort of do a free-form statement of what you're position is. And I agree. Layla needs to check into that and figure out, what the parameters are or can be, and what the risks are of monitoring content.
I asked Councillor Spegman, Jerry, I have similar concerns to Hans, maybe even a little more extensive than Hans. But has the Democracy Project thought about doing this themselves? And I think about the old days of League of Women Voters and pamphlets that came out from those organizations. And I asked that for a couple of reasons. I worry about the issues of the city publicizing anything, and I'm mostly concerned about ballot measure type things, because trying to write a ballot title that everybody can agree on is just one part of the issue, but then having people, proponents or opponents, start professing their opinions in something that the city publishes, I think gets a little difficult. And I also worry to some degree about staff time that sounds easy on paper or as we discuss it here, but the reality when we actually get to it. I'd just be interested if the Democracy Project, it sounds well-intentioned, has thought about actually creating and publishing these rather than having political subdivisions do it.
Well, that's a fair question. I'm assuming that for the Democracy Project to take it on for 4 or 5 of the incorporated communities in the county, for them, they're volunteer organizations. So that would amount to a significant expenditure as opposed to having the 4 or 5 cities themselves do it. I can only assume that, again, because Oregon counties and in some cases cities have been doing this for decades, that a lot of the concerns you're legitimately raising have been well thought out, well considered, and I would expect Layla, knowing Layla, that she would do due diligence and make sure we're not getting in over our skis. But again, it's not like they're proposing something novel in Oregon.
I guess I would ask then, if we go forward with research by Layla and her staff, that we get an idea from Layla the time commitment that the staff would have to make, and even the time commitment that is going to take to do the research to find out whether we want to do the project. And then, and I even hate to ask this after seeing the legal bills that we're incurring on some of this stuff that's going on, but I can't see us going forward with something like this without really getting a good understanding of any liability that the city may incur by publishing candidate statements or bond issues or whatever the measure might be for. It just seems like such a slippery slope. I admire the Project Democracy Project. I respect the fact that it's being brought forward, and I can see some real advantages. I just have worry.
Okay, I'm sure they will be. I'm sure those concerns will be looked into. And again, I can only assume that we're not the first people in the history of Oregon voter pamphlets to raise these concerns. And from what I can tell, voter pamphlets are pretty common and pretty reliable and pretty valuable in Oregon. So I'm hoping the answers come out the right way.
Do you have any feedback on this, Linda?
No, I think I agree with Steve. I think that we need to do our due diligence, and it needs to include staff time and costs, and the reality of whether we can do it or not. If we can, I think it's a good idea.
My initial reaction was, I feel working with Layla closely as we all do, but probably as mayor, I do it a little more closely. But it seems like every time we get together as a meeting, we come up with something that, oh, Layla will go do this.
Yeah.
I think we probably slush something off on her this afternoon too. And it all takes time. She doesn't even have an administrative assistant right now. It's going to be a legal bill. And I just go, wow, having run in a couple of elections around here, I've never felt there was any lack of exposure as to who the candidates were in this small community. We have a ton of online news organizations and places where people post stuff, and it seems like everybody gets plenty of exposure. We've never done anything like this before. And I know that at a certain point in a small community like this, the staff has to be completely neutral as to who the candidates are, particularly Layla, because after the election, she works for whoever that constituted consul, whoever gets elected. And so I'm kind of squishy on this one. Unless you can change my mind, Jerry, for those reasons.
Well, I personally think the more information voters have at their disposal, the better. I don't think there's anything unusual about a public official from a political subdivision putting out a voter's pamphlet. If that were the case, we wouldn't have voter pamphlets at the county level or the state level in Oregon. So I appreciate the concerns being raised. I think they're easily addressed, and I think we should go forward and at least pursue until and unless we are told that it's a prohibitive undertaking, rife with all kinds of liability. I mean, honestly.
So why don't we ask?
Informed voters are not something that any of us, I think.
So why don't we ask
disagree with.
Layla? Why don't we ask Layla about the time that it might take and how feasible it would be with her current staff to be able to help us with this process.
Sure, thanks, Councillor Kozlowski. I'd be glad to talk about that. I think there's a lot of unknowns. I do think if it's as simple as taking content and putting it into a fairly simplified format that can be mailed out as part of another mailing, it's a pretty straightforward deal that we'd be willing to put the time into it. I think the question that Councillor Nuttall raised got my ears perked up. So I would like to look into that. And there's certainly, as we all know, costs associated with that, but I think it's important. I think the complexity will come from, as was mentioned, any potential ballot measures, because titling and what's in those is a bit more complicated. But either way, as the elections official, I have to deal with that. So if the council would give me till May, if I could have a little time to look into it, just because as I don't know if you haven't been in my office recently, my whiteboard is full of critical path dates right now with respect to budget, annexation, and a number of other things.
Right.
So if I could just buy a little time and come back to you in May, that will give me plenty of time to sort of have those conversations, connect with Dan about potentially including it in the water bill, what that timing would look like, et cetera.
So I have a comment. I just got an email from somebody that's on this call, and he doesn't get a water bill because he pays it online, and he doesn't go to the water. So I'm thinking it's going to have to be a mailing to get to everybody. It used to be that we all got that. We don't all get that anymore, and so it might be wise to just think about a mailing.
Okay. Yeah, we'll need to look at all options, I think. So.
Can I?
Jerry, I'm going to ask Jerry.
Let me ask something. In this day and age, wouldn't it be as efficient to just to post these on the city's website as opposed to doing snail mail? I mean,
Yeah,
who mails stuff anymore? I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, that's something to consider. I think.
Well, I mean, I think that would raise a lot more questions myself.
It might.
In a voter's pamphlet. I mean, we have a very well-established process in Oregon that is ingrained in the fabric, the political fabric of the state. And you're not comfortable with that, but you want to do something bolder and post it up on the website where it can be argued that the city is in a daily, has a daily opportunity to adjust and control content. That would scare me personally. But
well, that's a point, because now you got the candidates up on the city's website, and the city's supposed to be neutral.
Yeah.
And the
So
lines
I
get
think-
blurred, but you make a good point about the water bill. We've got a certain percentage. We can't use the water bill if we're going to do an effective
Yeah.
thing,
And-
because
and
we have a larger and larger group of people that pay their water bill directly.
I think it's a lot more complicated than it seems, and I think it's going to take a lot of staff time. So it's really important to count on Layla to honestly let us know both what it costs, time commitment, and if there's a capacity issue. I think that's the Layla question.
So one other question I guess I have for, and maybe it's not answerable, Jerry, but has there been any thought about the project along with the cities approaching the county and saying, hey, we'd like to see our local elections included in the Tillamook County voters pamphlet? And I say this because the county and the state have professional election officers whose only role is to deal with the elections, the publication of a voter's pamphlet, and all the laws and requirements that go along with that. We're asking a staff who do a lot of things, but professionally handling elections is not at the top of their list. And I just know that there's a lot of detail to that kind of work. So it seems like if the cities would band together and go to the elections office along with the Democracy Project and say, hey, you know, why aren't we just adding a page 2 here for local elections? I think do they not even publish, and I can't remember, to be honest, do they not even publish our local measures? Are they not even in the Tillamook County voters pamphlet?
I think they used to. I think it's a financial issue.
I think it's worth asking because
I agree.
For all kinds of reasons. I mean, they could do the mail. It may be a cost we could. It might be easier to pay Tillamook County to do the project with the information. Put it on top of Layla. They're all, the county's also the ones responsible for registering people and where they go to get registered to vote and all that kind of stuff. The city doesn't get involved in that.
Well, so the Democracy Project would and has asked the county to do it. The county has turned them down. So the project, I believe, is trying to rally support for it at the local city level. And the assumption is that if there is if Garibaldi and Bay City and Wheeler and ourselves and other subdivisions do it, you know, obviously it would be great if they could all vote to do it and then convince Tassie O'Neill to do it herself. So that is the end goal. That is what they would like. That's what Clatsop County does. That's what other counties do. So they would like it to happen. I know when I was filing to run for office here, I had to submit the very information on my election forms that would be used in a voter pamphlet if the county did put one together for local offices. So obviously it's not that hard to generate that content and gather that content, but for, I guess, as Linda's suggesting, for fiscal reasons, Tillamook doesn't do it. So maybe the county will be more inclined to do it if they see that the cities are at least talking about it at the city level.
Well, I wonder if it would make any difference to them if the city said, "Hey, we'll pay you so much money if you'll do this for us. So you have the expertise in the process of doing it. Just include us in the pamphlet, and how much do you want for it?"
Plus, they're already mailing them out to everybody, so there's no
exactly.
Exactly.
You know, it's not a big deal, but it's going to be $500 or $600 or $700 if we have to do a mail on our own. But you know, I don't know. It's just and I hear Jerry. I hear you talk about, well, if Garibaldi and Rockaway and all these different communities do it, it just seems like. And I appreciate the initiative and the idea and all that. It just seems like it's got warning signs all over when you got all these communities creating their own little voters pamphlet and sending it out, and people get missed. They didn't get one in the box, and you got complaining, and anyway. Enough said, I guess.
I think the consensus is here. Could I ask you, Jerry, to work with Layla over the next 60 days to kind of answer some of our questions and put together kind of a performa on what we'd be up against on this thing? and get back to and deal with this?
Sure.
Okay, would that work?
Yep, that's fine. At the May meeting?
Yeah, does that work for you, Layla?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. I think we all got questions. You're probably gonna have to make a few phone calls and could probably resolve a lot of these, but yeah, that last one you said, Steve, that's a good one. You know, you supposedly mail one to everybody and somebody doesn't get one. Are they gonna be upset? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I think the consensus is, Jerry, you and Layla come back to us in May and we'll take another run at this puppy, okay?
All right.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jerry, for that. Well, let's move forward. Our next item is the Emergency Management Water Master Plan update from Dan Weitzel, our Public Works Director.
Hello, everybody. If I could I get the sharing rights?
There you go, Dan.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Nope. So I'm at a little bit slideshow. It keeps me on track and kind of also has some really good information in it. Yes. Okay. Jump through all the hoops and there we go. All right, so I think most everybody knows, besides being the Public Works Director, I've been also doing the emergency manager stuff, and which has spanned it over quite a few different things. Tonight, I just want to give you guys kind of a quick overview of my plan, where I'm at, what I'm looking to do this coming year. So I do have some goals as an emergency manager. One of them is pre-plans for different scenarios for the city. You know, we always talk about the Cascadia event over and over and over, but which is great because that's the worst case scenario. But there is other things, which I know even Steve, being a fire guy, knows about. When it comes to plans, you do also want to have some stuff that's kind of geared to specific things: wildfire, wind events, snow events, and even a water system compromise. Both Linda and Steve were instrumental in producing a emergency operations plan for the city. It's a great plan. It's the 30,000 kind of foot level. But I want to start bringing some of the plan pieces into a little bit more focus on these different levels. So that's one of my goals this year. It's a big goal, but I want to start chipping away at it. So the other thing is the emergency supplies, which we've talked about in the past. We've been working on adding things to essentially to our cash, and being financially smart about these things, some of which you're going to hear a little bit later on in this plan or this presentation. But essentially, I'm going to be working on shelter, food, and water. And there's a lot of little pieces in there, but I'm not in this presentation going to really dive into weeds. Just these are my goals. And the other thing is one of my other goals is wayfinding, signage. We started last year putting together a plan. It was based off maps that were done by folks with the EVC. And we got our thermoplastic. Unfortunately, it was towards the winter months, so you can't go put that stuff out in the winter. If you do, you'll be replacing it the following year, and it's not cheap to replace. So signage is on my goal, and public education. As you guys know, there was when we had the very small tsunami, but the volcano that blew up created a wave. You know, it was kind of prevalent that the public education part we needed to kind of circle back around to, because a lot of people were asking, why don't we have sirens? And, you know, places that had sirens, unfortunately set them off and scared a lot of people. So it's not just us that got to work on public education, but we need to work on that education piece. So the other thing that's a goal is communication. You know, I kind of weird. I like to read after action reports. I like to look at NIOSH reports, and pretty much the number one thing that comes up on any of these things, these after action reports, is communication. And so I've been working with Bruce Maxwell. I've been working with Lee and the PWAT group. Most of you guys have seen and heard about the radio tower trailer. There's a nice picture of it there. So it's it's essentially a tower that goes up 42 feet if we need it to, or it can stay somewhat down. And then we've been working on radio boxes. because we're not sure where we're going to end up in a disaster. And so instead of having stuff static to a building, we have grab and go stuff, plug and play. So myself and Bruce Maxwell have been putting together these boxes. He's been essentially my teacher, and I've been doing a little bit of the hands-on work. So we're working on that communication, and this communication is for the ham operators. It's not essentially for me to use, but for the people in our community that are skilled in using it. And so it's being trained it's going to be shown to them so they can get hands on it and stuff. This communication equipment also has a small modification to it that allows essentially emails to be sent through ham radios. And I don't know how much you folks, I know Mike's been in the military, I know Scott's been on fire, or Steve's been on fire, but sometimes radio traffic can drive you bonkers. Well, sometimes a little quick message that says, I need 7 dump trucks is real quick and easy for somebody else to hear. This equipment's also being set up that it can communicate using that same technology, what they call WinLink. Will also talk straight to the Salem systems. So training, everything is good for books on shelves and such, but training is going to be another thing. City staff is going to be going through some mild ICS classes. We're going to touch on different classes that the EVC put out. And then I don't know how much of our city council yet has incident management classes, but the new House bill that just went through, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, House Bill 4068, actually requires now all elected staff or elected officials to have some form of training. So I'll be getting you some stuff out to make it as painless as possible when it comes to ICS classes. So just be on the lookout to that. So city staff, which is a lot on this as far as I go, I'm going to be working with the Tillamook County Emergency Management. So we have a unified program. It's not something we're trying to come up with, and it's opposite of what the county's doing. So far, I have a meeting set up also with the Cannon Beach Emergency Manager. There's not very many emergency managements being taken care of by cities. They all kind of go, I hope the county's taken care of type of thing. So Tillamook has a new one. He's new to our area, so I'm going to be, like I said, working with him. So, and then once again, we're going to be continuing working with EVC in the Halem Bay. They did a radio class for the city staff. It was a great class. I think everybody that participated in it got some really good skills out of it. So, and then drills. There are going to be some of the drills that come up for emergency preparedness, not just pictures on my screen. So with that, I'm actually going to turn this presentation over to Lee. If you can make Lee a participant, that would be awesome.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. And I just want to reiterate a couple of things that Dan said, and that's the collaboration that has occurred between some volunteers and the Public Works Department to the benefit of this community, and it's been wonderful. We've learned a lot, and I hope that some of these new happenings will show up here in the near future. Go ahead, Dan. So this is our latest acquisition. For any of you that were in or around the military, you might recognize some of this material. And I can't say how pleased that I am to have been part of this process. Go ahead, Dan. You can just kind of run through them. So we've got ovens and grills and all military grade equipment. This material all came from Coos County, and it was made available through Velda Handler, who's part of the Medical Reserve Corps here in the area. And she was on a call with the Medical Reserve Corps up and down the coast. And it became clear that there was this opportunity to secure this product. What we didn't know was what kind of condition it was in. So this came from Coos County. And as it turned out, a real bright side is that all this material is brand new. It's never been used, never been in the field. And the crowning touch here, Dan, this didn't cost the city anything outside of fuel for a truck and trailer to go down to Coos Bay and one of Dan's staff for 2 days. So we were able to secure all this material, which on today's market on eBay is about $12,000. And it's now in the city's hands at virtually no cost. So thanks for continuing to support the effort that Dan and PWAT are doing.
All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Linda. She's got a little talking part on it.
So the Department of Human Resources at Oregon State is responsible for the sheltering and mass care supplies for any emergency in the state of Oregon. After the wildfires occurred late last year, they became really aware that they did not have the capacity and that they hadn't done enough planning to make sure that this operation would work successfully. So they created an emergency management division in the Department of Human Services. And that division has come up with some plans that I think are really excellent. They've reached out to EBC-NB as the kind of first test case. So we will be doing a joint drill with the City of Manzanita, EBC, and Department of Human Resources Emergency Management Division to set up a shelter site at Underhill Plaza. That shelter site will include the mass care. It'll include shelters for up to 80 people. It'll include food and water. It will also include the Medical Reserve Corps, and this particular exercise will focus on medical transport out of the area. So we're going to, on June the 15th, EBC, the City of Manzanita, and DHS will have a drill at Underhill Plaza and set up the tents and the operations at Underhill Plaza. On the next day, June 16th, we'll open it up to the community and have the community come in and view the operations and the setup that has been established by DHS. It's a really exciting opportunity. It's really exciting because it combines volunteers, the city, and the state, and we're really looking forward to it. So there will be more to come as we get closer to the date.
Thank you, Linda. So does anybody have any questions on as far as emergency management stuff?
Hi, Dan. I guess am I talking over somebody?
No, I was just saying, go ahead, Steve.
I'm sorry, you know me. I was actually probably for Lee. I was just wondering, have we got suitable location for, and you don't have to divulge it if you don't want, but we have a suitable storage area for this kitchen materials that you were able to acquire? We've got the room for that.
Steve, I'm really glad you brought that up. This is a dilemma that is appearing more critical than it was a few months ago, and that is sufficient storage space, not only for this equipment, but for other emergency supplies. So currently Dan's staff has been working lots of hours, and they have cleared out the Quonset hut, and we're storing the material in there for the time being. We still need to go through it, make an inventory list of exactly what's there, as we have done with the other supplies. But currently it's in the Quonset hut.
And that's reasonable as long as you're not under the leaky part of the roof, I guess, probably. Then the other thing I was going to ask about, probably for Dan, and that is, I didn't hear any mention by anyone about the fire district, and I'm assuming that they're going to be part of the drill process that you're putting together in June, that Linda's putting together in June.
Yeah, they are. I haven't reached out yet to Chris because we just finalized, as of actually today,
Oh,
the plans. But Chris, we're going to reach out, particularly because of the transport aspect. We're going to reach out to him, and I really hope he'll want to play.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions from the council for Dan or Lee at this point on this? Is there any questions or comments from the public on this information?
I don't have any hands raised.
Okay,
All right, well, then I'll jump straight into the next little part is letting you guys know the water master plan update. We got it back from the state because they have to review our water master plan, which I will let you know is very expensive and was one of the big ticket items on that visa bill. So they finally got it back to us. I want to let you know both the 2006 and the 2020 plan I put on here will be located on the city's website under the Public Works Department. Josh has already got it up there, so you can see it now. The brand new one is at the top of the list of it under the Public Works Department, and the older plan is down towards the bottom of the thing. But it gives you the ability to compare both the plans. So the plan is a great resource to understand our water system. So at the beginning of the council meeting, there was a person asking some really good questions about our water system, and I'm always excited when people want to learn about the water system. So take a look at that plan. It is a very large document, but it is also very detailed. It has the maps. It talks about our water sources, our water rights, our water protection. I mean, everything is in that document. So it also puts out essentially the project costs. One of the greatest parts of that I got with this document is typically documents when we get them, they give you the numbers, the price tag on the projects right then and there, but we have no way of updating those except for manually going through a document and updating them. Well, one thing the engineering firm said, here's an Excel spreadsheet. You change a few boxes and all your plans come into alignment with what the cost is at that time. So that's huge because they outlined 76 different water main projects in the report. And they break it down pretty small because usually when we're doing street projects, we're not like replacing a street from one end of town to the other. We're usually only doing 1 or 2 blocks. And so they actually broke down each one in the report down to 1 or 2, or typically 1 block or sometimes 2. So that was a big plus for me when I'm doing the planning financially for the city. This document will play a huge part along with the stormwater master plan in developing the city's overall CIP. So, and I know Layla has been super excited about wanting to get to that. I'm super excited she wants to. So it really give us the information for that. So also in the plan, which was required now by Oregon Drinking Water Program, is the plan also has to include your resiliency. And so there's a lot of resiliency information built into the plan on different things for the city to do, things that we are already doing. So the plan's on the website. Like I said, I recommend anybody that wants to view it, hop in there and look at it. Even if you just peruse it, it's a great document to go through. So any questions I can answer on that?
any questions from the council for Dan on the master plan update?
I'm the monopolizer here, but and I haven't read the plan. You just posted it today, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. But can you talk a little bit about the reservoir issue that we have versus this water plan? Are the reservoir issues included in the plan?
Yeah.
Are they included as part of that 76 different projects?
Actually, it's a separate little line item for our separate than the water main projects. There are water resiliency projects in there as well. But yes, as part of the water master plan, he looked at the system. He took our water resiliency study and essentially takes bits and pieces from that and puts it in. One thing I will point out is, as all things as we know right now with the market, as prices have gone through the roof on things. So I do know in the water master plan, his cost for replacement is low compared to what it is now. So it's been pretty crazy, but yes, that project's in there. And just as a side note, we are on our grant, we are finishing wrapping it up. I am reviewing the document from the engineer, which got us to 10% engineering. And we're looking at to see what our next steps are as far as where that project's going to go for the reservoir replacement idea.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the council, or do we have any questions from the public on the master water plan?
Well, this is definitely the document that Karen should go to review her interest in water.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions or comments, thanks very much, Dan. That's great.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item here is the COVID state of emergency. As you know, through this last 2-year process, we're in a state of emergency for a while and we ended it, then we went back to a second state of emergency. And as you probably all know, the state of Oregon is lifting the indoor mask mandate at 11:59 p.m. Friday, this Friday. And also the state of Oregon state of emergency ends on the last day of March. And our resolution basically says that we will follow suit with the state. So unless we can have some discussion on this, but what we need to do is rescind our resolution 2105, which put the mask mandate in order in Manzanita for masks indoors, and also will in the state of emergency as of the end of the month. Does anybody have any questions on that or understand what I'm talking about here? I don't know if anybody's going to have any public comment on that. The question that's come up, and I've talked to a couple of the merchants on Lanita, what are they going to do? I think you will see some employees still wearing masks, and the public probably still wearing masks indoors if it makes them feel comfortable, but I'm not aware of any business that's going to require people to wear masks after Friday. It's just would be too much of a hassle, I think, for them. So until we move into the, hopefully we don't move into the next COVID surge, this is what's going to happen. So
I think my wife's going to try it.
Really?
Your wife asked for masks? Boy.
She's leaving it up to staff, and even though her staff are basically young and healthy and all of that, they are used to this procedure. Customers have been pretty compliant about it over the last 2 years, and you know they're at least going to give it a shot. So her staff was more comfortable with people staying masked, so we'll see how it goes.
So the employees are going to stay masked, right?
No, and they're going to ask customers to remain to wear a mask as well, and we'll provide them for free if people don't have one.
Well, I understand that the people at the Little Apple the employees are going to stay masked, but they're not going to ask people to wear a mask when they come.
With the traffic flow they have going through there, I just don't know how you could enforce it realistically. It'd become a nightmare.
All I know is I haven't had a cold or the flu in 2 years. I haven't with anything. So you'll probably see me wear mine once in a while. So I guess what I need here is a motion to rescind resolution 2105 and end our indoor mask mandate as of 11:59 p.m. Friday, and end our state of emergency here in Manzanita on the last day of the month of March.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to rescind resolution 2105 and terminate our state of emergency effective 11:59 Friday, March the 12th.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. That's easily done. Okay. This is mine also, to lead the discussion on the 4th of July parade. Now, we haven't had a parade for 2 years. It looks like this is the year to go back to doing it. Layla says they've been getting inquiries at City Hall about the parade. So anybody have any questions or thoughts about the parade this year? We're going to have to, it's happened we've been off for 2 years. So just kind of review what we do. The city in the last few years, the city employees have come up with a theme which we use for the parade. I think Dave Dillon's on the call here tonight. They usually get together with the prior citizens of the year. And I may ask if Dave's on, if you could give me the rundown on how you handle that. And normally you give me the envelope of the citizen of the year, I think at the June city council meeting.
Yeah, we do that. What we have to do is get together. I don't know, I think it's in May, put out the city publicizes, hey, we're looking for people to nominate as citizen of the year. And then those all come to the city and the city sends them to me. And then the previous citizens of the year get together and work out somebody to choose. And then I prepare a little note to hand to you and the first time it's revealed publicly is when you open that envelope.
Right.
And one other thing occurred to me. Now normally that person is Grand Marshal of the current parade, but we've got 2 previous Grand Marshals. So we might want to plan to have 3 convertibles to say current citizen of the year.
Can you find
last citizen of the year? So
can you find 3 convertibles in Tillamook County?
Well, we got one. So old PT Cruiser works fine, but
well, I guess to be fair, they all should have the opportunity to be honored as co-grand marshals of the parade, don't you think?
Yeah, we'll declare them that. But every dog needs to have its day. So not that people are dogs. But
can I leave it up to you, Dave, to get with Layla and work out how you want to get these information out for people to get nominated?
Yes, sir. I'll look back to see what the timing was and whatever the city said and feed it to Leila. And then that way it comes out, it's from the city looking for nominations for Citizen of the Year.
Yeah, so because this is her first year here for the force when we're doing something. So do you have any questions, Layla, is what we're doing here? Do you understand what I mean about a theme? I think the last theme I can remember was after we had the tornado. It was the Wizard of Oz theme of some sort. That you came up with. I don't know what you want to come up with now.
Yeah, I'll connect with Dave and get onboarded and appreciate the onboarding in advance, Dave.
You're very welcome.
So I get by consensus, I guess we're doing the parade this year, right? And nobody has an issue with that, or
yay.
It's like the answer is no issues. So I guess that's done. We're going to move now into old business, which is the short-term rental committee discussion, which we are continuing from last month. We got kind of ran out of time and so forth. And first, last month, I want to apologize to Joe Niehaus for how she was treated with some negative comments in the chat while she was trying to give her presentation last month. She was a former chair of the short-term rental work group, and we had asked her to make a presentation on what that group did. And she deserves our respects for her time and all the work she put in on that committee. And I'm really sorry that she wasn't treated very well that night. So the issue is that we have problems that we want to reserve for the short-term rental situation. We spent all afternoon talking about that. We have a proposal how we're going to make that committee, put that committee together. And I feel it's important that each stakeholder has a seat at the table. I mean, this group must respect each other. They got to be able to listen, compromise, and find some consensus and solve some problems for us. The council will give them direction as to what they are to look at, and they just give us recommendations. We control the output and what takes place, but it's just a basic principle of leadership and business management to include all the stakeholders on that committee, not to exclude, for example, the professional property managers. If you just have a committee that's made up of some stakeholders at the exclusion of others, you're going to have a disaster on your hands. It worked very efficiently when we did with the work group. They came up with some great solutions, and we need a similar composition as we go forward. We have a lot of issues to deal with as to numbers, concentrations, how rentals are handled, and homeowners associations and so forth. So we spent a bunch of time talking about this afternoon. And so the next thing that are my feeling on that. I think we need a broad-based committee that includes all the stakeholders. The way it's structured in the proposal is they only have a limited number on the committee. The committee is basically dominated by homeowners that don't know how to have short-term rentals. So before we take this back to the council, we cut this off last month on public comment. So I'm going to open up public comment right now on the issue of the short-term rental committee composition. Nina, does anybody want to make a comment on that before we go back to the council and discuss this committee?
I do have one comment from Joe Newhouse, disguised as Leela.
Yes, it says Leela Salmon is talking, but she's not unless she interrupts me. First, Mike, I'd like to thank you for your comments about me. It was, I understand why people might feel that only people who live full-time in Manzanita should have a voice, but I think you're absolutely right. It needs to be balanced. We don't want a committee of people who want only STRs and want every home to be STRs and want no controls. Just as we don't want a committee of people who don't want any STRs and want to close them all off. I mean, I think you're absolutely right on that. We need a balance, and that's what the work group was trying to do with the proposal for the committee, where it has 3 people who don't own short-term rentals, 2 people who have a vested interest in short-term rentals, and then some other people like the Planning Commission and someone from the Tillamook County Association. What I really wanted to talk about, though, is something that has been coming up. I'd like to speak on behalf of the many of the urban growth boundary residents. These are the people, including myself, who live in Pine Ridge or in the area just north of the state park and east of the beach on streets like Windward or Sitka, or the people who live on 18th or 19th Street near the water tower. A UGB, by state definition, is an area designated by a city as a line drawn on a planning map to designate where a city expects to grow in the next 20 years. It's a part of what the city plans to have in their city. Just last month, the Planning Commission voted to add the UGB section of the Highlands neighborhood to Manzanita proper. Are the people in the UGBs affected by short-term rentals? Of course they are. The UGB area north of the park has about 20 STRs. All are under county control and not limited by Manzanita's 17.5% cap or Ordinance 10.3, by the way. The people who live in the Manzanita UGBs use the same post office, they walk down the same streets, they get their groceries from the same place, they shop in the same shops, they eat at the same restaurants, they use the same beach, they park on the same streets. Just like the people who live in the city proper. We volunteer on the same committees. Actually, without the UGB people, most of the organizations in Manzanita would have an even harder time operating. The Friends of the Library, the Hoffman Center, the Pine Grove Community House are a few well-loved organizations that make us a special community. They're run by volunteers. If you look at the people on their boards, most of them are not, quote, Manzanita residents. One reason is that the people in the surrounding area, especially in the UGBs, consider Manzanita and the organizations within to be theirs. They want to keep their city vibrant, meaningful, and yes, livable. When we say we live here, we mean we live in Manzanita. Let us help.
Thank you, Joe. That was very well said. I'm going to say, I said this afternoon, I'm going to say this again. This is a time for everyone who lives in this diverse community to stand together and work together toward common goals and solutions for the problems that are in our community. And I'm asking everybody once again to do that. So thank you, Joe. Is there any other public comment?
Yes, Mark Kushner. I probably butchered that. Sorry, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Mark, how are you?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mark, we can hear you okay.
Mike, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you can. I live on Epo Avenue, which is city on my side and somewhat county and city on the other side. So I would echo Joe's comments about all of us needing to get together because we are intermingled. The person across from us is county. Next to them is someone city because their driveway opens onto Epo. We really are connected, and whether it's the 17.5% or the county not having that, in essence, doesn't matter. We really need to get together on this. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mark.
Did we lose Mark or was he?
I think he was
Was he
finished.
okay, okay. Do you have anybody else, Nina?
I do. Next, we have Catherine Stock.
Hi, good evening. I'll do the sound test. Did it work?
Yeah, Catherine. We can
Great.
hear
So this is brief, and it has to do not with some of the qualifications we've been talking about so far in terms of who would be members of the committee. I don't know what happened, but it must have been something for Mike to make an apology the way that he did. And it just brings to mind a couple of the skills that I think are paramount for people who serve on these committees, and they would be the skills of collaboration and good communication. So I think that may be more important than anything else, whether you're just a block outside the urban growth boundary or within, or the other things you're looking at. So I just hope and would assume that when you are considering people, however that may work for this next committee or work group, that those two qualities are high on the list for the candidates that you consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
And I have no other hands raised.
Okay, we're going to take this back to the council now. So at this point, we're gonna have some more discussion, but I'm gonna ask everybody to, I would suggest that we approve the suggested makeup of this committee that it was presented to us last month. But let's have some further discussion if anyone would like to jump in.
Mike,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, I'll jump in. Mike, as you know, you and I had a nice long talk about this after the last meeting, and I think we both aired our thoughts and didn't convince each other of anything in particular. I'm not particularly concerned about the issues raised by Joe or Mark in terms of people living in the UGB. What I'm concerned about, and my concern comes from hearing from a lot of folks, I'm concerned about a committee that is charged with dealing with neighborhood livability, having two folks designated on the committee who have a vested interest, a financial interest in the very industry that is causing the livability impacts that the committee is designed to address. I've made my case a couple of times. I understand it's a minority view. I'm not going to belabor the point, but that's my concern, and that's the concern that I most frequently hear from folks in the community. I don't hear people obsessing about whether somebody lives on one side of the road or another. What I hear about is wanting to have a committee made up of neighborhood residents who are most familiar with the livability impacts of the industry. But more importantly than the composition of the committee, I just want to make sure, we'll vote on the composition, and then we'll do the process that Steve and Dave did for the budget committee to figure out who's going to be on the committee. But what I think is the most important thing, Mike, and you addressed it loud and clear at the work session earlier today, is what the charge is going to be to the committee. And so I don't want to complicate things. I know we have to get past this composition issue, but I just want to make sure that we as a council have an opportunity to clearly charge this committee in terms of the scope of what we want them to work on. I know that Steve has pointed out that the work group had a relatively limited scope, and they frequently wanted to exceed that scope to some extent because there was interest in conversations at many of their meetings, but they were limited because you guys charged them specifically with looking at that ordinance. So I just want to make sure that the public hears tonight that once we get past the composition of the committee, and then we go through the interview process to actually staff the committee up, we're also going to have council laying out loud and clear what the charge is with regard to density or the HOA rule, or what other issues we've talked about.
Yeah, Jerry, you and I did talk for a couple hours, and I think we both understand where we stand, and we don't have to necessarily agree on everything. But
right.
The important thing here is, well, first of all, I'm going to ask right now, we haven't even split the composition of the committee yet, but we need people to apply that want to serve on a committee that's going to be a tough job. So this isn't going to work unless people come forward. And I think we'll set it up similar to the way Steve and Dave worked with the budget committee appointment. We're going to have a group of us look at these applications. And so we could put together a good functioning committee. And I'll guarantee you, you and I talked about this, Jerry, you and I are not going to let any one organization or one stakeholder dominate this committee. If that happens, we'll fix it. But I am a firm believer that every stakeholder deserves a place at the table. So, and we're going to tell them basically tell them what to do. And, the council is going to say, hey, we want you to look at this density issue or whatever. And they're going to report back with a recommendation to us. And we're the only ones that take action. They're not a legislative body. They're just a committee that works for the council. And we will totally control it. And with your help, we will. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else want to chime in here? Everybody else on mute.
Mike, I spent 3 years or so chairing a committee with a similar composition of stakeholders, and it worked quite well. I believe it was there was good equal representation, and everybody was very civil and considerate of each other's motivations and concerns. And I think we got our work done very effectively, which is no guarantee that every committee is going to do that, but it sounds like there's a good legacy with the first iteration of this committee. So I personally don't have an issue with its composition.
Okay, well, we approved last month resolution 22-02, which was the establishment of the committee. So what I'm going to ask for a motion from someone here tonight and a second to establish the committee makeup as was suggested.
Mike, what about the directive aspect of that? Will we do that next? Or does that come later?
Well, I think the first thing we got to do is establish the committee, interview some people and get some people on the committee, and then we'll tell them what we're going to have them do. I think that's, Layla, am I on track with that? Is that the way we should handle this?
All right, I was on mute. Yes.
So we're attacking this the way we need to do. So we need to have a resolution to accept suggested.
Before you do that,
Just
could
a
you go
motion.
over what the composition,
Sure. I've
that
got
we're
it.
either agreeing or not agreeing to?
One member shall be a short-term rental owner or agent of a currently licensed home within the city of Manzanita. One member shall be a short-term rental owner of a currently licensed home within the city of Manzanita who manages their own property. And we have about 88 individuals, I believe, who manage their own property and do not use property managers. And they're a stakeholder and they should have a place at the table. And then we basically have 3 residents. One member who is a non-short-term rental owner with a home within the high density block. So we're trying to get someone in that area, and hopefully this will all match up. One member who is not a short-term rental owner who lives in the low density area, and one member who is not a short-term rental owner who just lives in Manzanita, anywhere in the city. And then those are the voting members. There's 5 of them. So it's a 3-2 split over people that are basically have an interest in a short-term rental who own one. The 6th member will be a representative from the Planning Commission who's non-voting. And the 7th member will be a representative from the Tillamook County Short-Term Rental Committee. They also have one. That'll be a non-voting member also. And the mayor may also appoint a council member to act as a non-voting liaison. And we'll see what happens with that.
Okay,
Mayor, if I could ask just for clarification, it would be important to me at least that we outline the responsibilities of the committee prior to their first meeting. I wouldn't want a situation where we just arrive at the meeting and say, this is what we want you to do. I'd like to see that vetted both from a public perspective and from the council perspective as well.
Well, that should be part of the application process. I think that's really important.
How do they know what they're doing,
Yeah,
what they're signing up for if we don't tell them what it's going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how do we know what questions they ask as an interviewer
Yeah.
if we don't know what issues their
Well, do we
their
want
perspectives are going to be tested on?
Do we want to try to define that tonight? We can. I think we all have a pretty good idea in our mind, don't we?
I think I'd rather have Layla and her staff come back with some suggestions. It doesn't even have to necessarily go to a council meeting if she could just share their thoughts relative to, and then that James has got to probably weigh in on that as well, so that it meets the moratorium responsibilities.
That's a good idea. So we could still go ahead and approve the suggested composition of the committee, can't we?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then we're going to have to come up with what we're going to charge them with doing by the next meeting then, right? I'm getting a little lost here, I guess. So before we go out and put applications out there to get volunteers to serve on this committee, you think we have to establish exactly what we want them to do?
I think it can be done consecutively. I don't think it's going to be either rocket science or any surprise to anybody who's interested in serving on this committee as to what their role is going to be. It's going to be things like density. It's going to be things about caps. It's pretty clear what it's going to end up being. But I guess I'm just asking that it be framed specifically before we pick the committee and before we interview for the committee. But I think the recruitment for committee members and the development of that information can be consecutively so that we don't waste time.
It might be
separate
helpful.
processes.
Oh, pardon me, Councilor Nuttall.
Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Go.
It might be helpful to that in the resolution, and I could read sort of the 3, there are sort of purposes outlined, which are broader. I think what Councilor Nuttall is asking for is a little more specific, which I appreciate. But the purpose of the committee is to recommend amendments to Ordinance 1003 in order to enhance livability and other issues between short-term rental properties and other Manzanita properties as directed by City Council. 2, to weigh and examine options for future short-term rental livability options, again, as directed by Council. And to assist in crafting informational packages that can be distributed to the public to help all parties to understand the procedures set out in 1003. I would offer that that's probably sufficient to do the call for applicants, but I would heartily agree that the council should set sort of objectives or work plan objectives for that group prior to their first meeting, and we can have additional conversation if the council's comfortable with that approach. I could do, as Councilor Nuttall suggested, is kind of come back with sort of some recommendations that you all can discuss, and then that can be the basis for the first meeting. I think based on our conversation this afternoon and the many conversations I've had with community members throughout my time here, we have a pretty good sense of what those priority issues are. And I think the good work that the work group did really gives us a pretty darn good head start on that as well.
The only question I would have about that is, as you interview the candidates, and I'm sure there are going to be a number, it would be really nice to have a little more of the specifics of what you're looking for. I think the advertising, I think you're fine, but I think whoever does the initial interview should have pretty clear objectives as they do that interview.
So, Layla, as you read the three purposes of the committee, the first one and the third one, I don't think bear a whole lot more discussion. It's the middle one where the action is, I think, and I think it would be, I think I'm agreeing with Linda that it would be helpful to the whole selection process, the interview process, for us to have a better idea, and for applicants to have a better idea of what the range of possibilities are. So I'll probably do it whether anybody wants me to or not. I'll probably send you an email with some suggestions.
Oh, please do.
Potential livability issues to be looked at. And I think if other members on council were to do that, to just off the top of our heads, really just a short list of potential livability issues. That doesn't say that the committee has to address all of them. It doesn't say that everybody on the committee has to be committed to all of them. It just gives them a sort of laundry list of possibilities so they know what they're getting into. So I'm probably going to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I can do that too, because I have a list in my head too.
Send me your list. I've added it to my list.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion though? I'm a little nervous about throwing everything into the wash and hoping for the best. I feel, well, first of all, I think what you read, Layla, is actually the original charge to the work group, or very similar to it, which actually was what we felt constrained by, because it references Ordinance 10.3 quite a bit. And it was clear in the original charging document that our role was to deal with 10.3 and not get involved in either I think it's 9506? That's the CAP ordinance. I've forgotten. Anyway, what I'm recommending to you is to change that language that you read to us to include, if it is 9506 or whatever the appropriate ordinance is, so that it broadens the authority of the committee to deal with things like CAP, to deal with things like density. Because if you strictly go with 10.3, it doesn't allow them to do that. And I'm happy to look at that with you if you'd like, because we looked at it a lot. And I know Joe and the rest of and Lee and the rest of that original work group probably would be willing to handle that as well, as far as providing insight. But just broaden it out a little bit. But I would resist throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, because then you put the onus on the committee to come up with some solutions to issues that may not even be solvable. And so that's all.
Well, we do have to be careful about, we got to take baby steps here. These are some tough issues, and we're going to have to give them some direction. Maybe give them one at a time or one section at a time. You know what I mean? And we give them I'm sure we all have ideas in our minds, and we can't throw 20 ideas at them and say, go fix it. We're going to have to give them some direction and some help and control this process.
At least identify the two enabling ordinances, because then you pretty much give them the flexibility that they're going to need to answer the questions that are going to be posed to them. And the other comment I'm going to make is that at least during the process that we used for the work group, the prior work group, membership in the work group and citizen really didn't mean there wasn't a lot of difference. The floor was open to anybody who wanted to comment. We had a process that allowed people to make a submittal, We had a change submittal document process that if you had an idea about how you'd like to see short-term rentals handled differently in the community, you had a defined process on how to make that work. And each of those change submittal documents were reviewed by the work group, and ultimately there was actually votes taken as to whether to move them forward to council or not. So all I'm suggesting, at least by historical standards, membership in the committee and just being a concerned citizen or a citizen who has an interest, there's going to be lots of opportunity for everybody. I hope. I won't be part of it, but I hope.
You already did your share. So do we have a plan, or shall we move forward and approve the composition of the committee?
I'm prepared to do that.
Yeah, I'm prepared to do that too.
Okay, well, let's somebody give me a motion here.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would move for council approval of the suggested makeup of the short-term rental standing committee as submitted last month's meeting.
Second.
And moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the suggested committee makeup, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so do we got a plan on where to go? Do you think we got a plan, Layla, on what we do next? Or we got to go out and find some people who want to work with us and so forth?
Yeah, I think so. I'll coordinate with all of you on the issues and timing, et cetera. So
just another little job for you that you can.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
At least she's still smiling. That's a good sign.
I think we're on to the city manager's report now.
Which is short, unlike the list, but that's okay. So I'll just be brief. Just Planning Commission, letting everybody know we have 2 items on the agenda. Agenda will be posted Monday. So for those that are watching the Planning Commission, you can get those agenda materials and packet on our website. We post those a week in advance. So please do visit the city's website and get those materials if you're interested, and join us at 4 p.m. on the first day of spring, March 21st. The other update is the last meeting that we were at. We were 2 days away from interviewing architects. So Councilors Spegman and Kozlowski and our owner's rep, Jim Williford, all participated in interviews, and we have selected Bearing Architecture as the architect that we hope to work with. We're currently in the process of negotiation right now. So we issued a notice of intent to award. We did not receive any protests. And so I began negotiations with them last week, and those are going well. And I anticipate bringing council a draft contract for approval in April. So very excited. So far, the negotiations are going great. Feel very confident in the team that we have chosen, and look forward to kicking that work off. So that itself will have a whole public outreach process and schedule that we'll be starting to put out a little more. And because the timing, you know, these things always take a little more time than I think we hope and wish. But we are pretty tracking close to that schedule that most of you have seen, but we will be making some adjustments to that to more accurately reflect where we are. The final thing I'll say to that too is that we are very close to finalizing the CMGC. Been working really hard with the city attorney on that. That's a more complicated RFP and then contracts. So what we've done for that is we've worked in depth on the contract end of it. So when the RFP goes out, there will actually be a draft of the contract. And I know that that was something that the council had specifically requested that I make sure I was coordinating with the city attorney on. And they've been really helpful in kind of catching all the little things that come up in those. So by the time we get that RFP released, it's hopeful that on the back end negotiations will go faster because the contract will have been already reviewed. So those are my highlights that I have for the moment.
So Layla, is the project schedule for City Hall on the website?
It is. It should be. If it's not, I will put the updated one once I
That would
have
be
it.
perfect. That would be
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Thank
I'm still trying to, once we get the architect's piece finished, then we can update
That's
that.
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Layla, or anybody have anything else for the good of the order tonight? Well, I guess we'll adjourn. Thank you so much for your hard work today. We did get a lot of work done today. Thanks. Thank you all. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Mike.